Hi guys, welcome back to our latest video, it being Sunday. Today what we want to cover is the third part of our series on Charlotte's anxiety and specifically her time during Year 8 at school. So for the international viewers, that would be when she was 12 and 13. But I think first you would like to just say...
Yeah, today it's 2 months since Charlotte died, and it's actually 3 years today that she got her first headache, and it's 34 months later to the day that she died. So yeah, it's quite something today, but it's getting harder. I don't think it's getting any easier, I have to say. But anyway, anxiety disorder in Year 8. I was clearing some cupboards out actually, and I came across these files here. There's this one here, which is completely full, and this one here is completely full. This is all relating to Charlotte's anxiety disorder at primary and at secondary school, so you can see that it was quite serious, the disorder that she had. A lot of it came down to low-level bullying, very precise low-level bullying. Year 8 was quite a change, a big change for her. She found herself, for a better word, a boyfriend who wasn't actually at the school that she was at. And anyway, she was quite sort of friendly with him. I met him a couple of times, a very young love, obviously, sort of 12, 13, 14 actually. Anyway, what happened, there were a lot of people who also knew him within her year group, and Charlotte and this young boy got on very well. And the real turning point for me with Charlotte's anxiety disorder was he went away for a few days, in fact with a couple of people from her year group, a couple of other boys, and they'd got on fine before he left, and then suddenly on the Sunday he was coming back, and Charlotte sort of phoned him, and I said to Charlotte, you know, if you want to see him this afternoon I could take you over or whatever. And he suddenly just announced, well, that's it, it's all finished, and she couldn't understand what was going on. And I often wonder to this day whether somebody in her year group had actually lied to him or said something. She was absolutely distraught, and that happened on the 7th of March 2010. And I've never forgotten it, because I have never had to deal with such fallout. She was beside herself, and of course then having to go back into school the next day, and I think a lot of her year group knew about it, a lot of people were talking about it behind her back. She was absolutely heartbroken. And then on top of this, this particular boy had then got somebody else from his school to start sort of almost wooing her, if you want. And half the kids in her year actually knew about it, so they all knew and she didn't know. So it was particularly unkind that year to her. She never went on, she went on one school trip, and that was Year 8 camp, which was in the October. She was due to go on the ski trip in the February. She couldn't go, she backed out about 2 days before. She just could not go, and she never ever went on another school trip after that. She just couldn't do it. And so her anxiety was so bad, she was just petrified that everybody was sort of looking at her, talking about her. So the anxiety disorder is a very real condition with any mental disorder, and I'm very much against any sort of bullying whatsoever. And I think nowadays it's even worse, because obviously you've got Instagram, you've got Twitter, you've got all the social media. Would you not say you're probably far more aware of it than I am?
Well, yeah, I mean the whole social media aspect brings about an entirely new and far harder to escape and understand matrix for cyberbullying and whatever else. And I saw, of course, it's a London Marathon today, and I was in the gym earlier watching some of that, and there was a chap on there who was running, I can't actually remember his name, he was running the London Marathon for a charity, I believe, which was against standing up to bullying, and he said that he was bullied from the age of 10 till 18, and by the end of that he almost took his own life. So a lot of these kind of disorders are brought about by things which happened many years ago, say, or had such a lasting effect. I mean, if you are bullied, it's hardly surprising that anxiety disorder arises as a consequence, because it makes you incredibly self-conscious and incredibly fearful of your everyday life. So I don't think there's any doubt that there's certainly some kind of correlation between the two.
And that really, I think, was the changing point for her. Year 9, that had some very good things, which I'll tell you next week. Year 9 is obviously quite a difficult year anyway. You're neither the youngest in the school, you're neither the eldest, your hormones are flying around all over the place, and I find it probably, I think, one of the more difficult years, Year 9. But that just sort of gives you a little bit of an insight into Charlotte's anxiety and how much damage by a few people was done to her, and that damage carried on with her. And as we said before, Miles and I have said, if she hadn't have had the cancer, we just don't know. We don't know how she would have coped with life. I think it would have been very, very difficult for her.
I mean, Charlotte's real difficulty was because she found it very difficult to socialise and engage in what most people would probably consider a formative schooling experience. She fell in with crowds which were in no way conducive to her healthy mental state, and a lot of her friends were somewhat advantageous of that relationship. They weren't solid friends.
No.
They were people that couldn't be relied upon, so she never really had, as you say, of that particular relationship breaking up, any kind of formal stability in terms of her school. I mean, obviously we tried to offer as much as we could at home, and that was and became Charlotte's safe place because of that. But those kind of issues in your younger stages obviously have huge repercussions.
And she never had sleepovers because there was nobody to have a sleepover with. That's how it was. And she wasn't asked anywhere. So life was very hard for her, very, very hard at a very tender age of 13. It was difficult. There was one occasion, which I will be honest, I can't remember when it was, but alarm bells obviously rang for me pretty loudly, and I got whoever I needed to get involved fairly quickly with CAMS and got it moved up quickly. She had at some point got very, very depressed, and she'd actually told me that she'd filled a sort of basin full of water and just basically wanted to stick her head in it because she just couldn't cope anymore. Fortunately we were close and she could talk to me, but it does concern me that if you can't talk to anybody, that's where the damage happens. So I suppose what I'm saying to people is just be very careful what you say. If you are going to say something unkind, just think about the consequences, because Charlotte suffered badly with all this, very, very, and we as her family had to pick the pieces up, and it took a long time.
And I think the other thing to mention is, especially with self-harm and in that case you just mentioned, those kind of suicidal tendencies, is often they are a cry for help, and if that cry for help is shouted for, then the best way of dealing it is not in an angry manner, but to say, as you did to Charlotte times ago, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, it's not.
And just be gentle and just be rational with it. I mean, if someone's in that state of mind, then the worst possible thing you can do is lambast them for being in it.
Yes, totally.
So be gentle, I suppose, and that applies to all kinds of mental health disorders, because they are, in my opinion, some of the most difficult and challenging to actually recognise and live with, because of course you can't see them, and you do get people who don't believe in mental health and don't recognise it. So they are very difficult. So if someone does come out to you, a family member or a friend or anyone for that matter, it's imperative that you deal with it with the utmost empathy, and if you can't be empathetic, at least be sympathetic to their needs and their situation.
Because Charlotte, when she used to come home, it would take many hours to calm her down. She would cry. She'd cry herself to sleep. It was hard, and it was very hard for me to have to watch all that and watch a very young girl going through that because of the selfishness of others, just basically
and not even the
winding her up.
selfishness, just the stupidity of others. You may not have even understood the severity of what they were doing, and that's why it's so important that even the lowest level of bullying can have huge knock-on effects and consequences.
Absolutely. Anyway, we're going to do a fun video on Wednesday, which somebody's put a request in for, and I think that's how you and Charlotte got on, and whether you fought.
Yes, we
Which
did.
you did.
Spar on occasion.
On occasion, so I think Miles will probably do quite a bit of that video. And next week we'll have a look at Year 9, and then we'll do Year 10 and 11, and then we will probably, there are some specific questions which people have asked me to do with the cancer, which I'll cover, and then we'll start on Charlotte's journey with the cancer and how that all developed. Anyway, okay.
Thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you again on Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.